Hi guys, welcome to Decode Prelims previous year questions, and today we are going to do the part 3 of the previous year question of 2025. We have successfully finished question 1 to question 50. We have not only understood the knowledge it takes to get the answer, but we have also understood the lines of thought and the art of deduction that actually is required in order to deduce most of the answers. And you have learned also that most of the answers just require your common sense and your presence of mind in order to get the answer, and that itself is the skill that you have to develop, and that you get it when you keep analyzing the previous year question. And I hope it has helped in this Decode Prelims previous year question program of SUDEEPVERSE IAS. Okay guys, let us go and try to decode the previous year question of 2025 from question number 50 to 75 and try to observe and decode. That will help you to dominate in the upcoming prelims 2026. Are you ready? Let us start off then. Okay, let us start off with this question. Understand that if you're going wrong in such questions, that means your basics are very weak, because all you need is the knowledge of basics in order to answer these questions. You don't even have to go beyond books. If you have read the basics properly in any one of the basic books, you should be able to answer such questions. So, to validate yourself if you are good in basics or not, you should always validate with such questions. If you are going wrong in such questions, that means that you are weak in basics. You have to revise more. Okay? Alright, let us solve this question. With reference to Indian polity, consider the following statements. An ordinance can amend any central act. An ordinance can abridge the fundamental right. An ordinance can come into effect from a back date. Which of the statements given above are correct? 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3 only. Okay. The moment you are reading this question, your mind should not go back to telling, what did I study? What did I study about ordinance? What did I study about ordinance in the book? This is not the way to think. You should never go back thinking that, are these sentences there in the book that I studied ordinance in? That is not the way to think. Always try to use your wisdom about ordinance. That is how you should think. Now look at this. Article 123 provides the power to the president to issue ordinances. To issue ordinances when Parliament is not in session. When Parliament is not in session. Okay, so this is what is Article 123. This is where the ordinance comes into picture. Now look at this. When the Parliament is not in session, then the President can issue ordinances. If the Parliament is in session, then don't you think the Parliament can pass the laws or it can enact the laws? So if the Parliament is not in session, only then the ordinances can be passed. Why? Because it acts as an alternative when the Parliament is not in session, so that it has the same force as law. Okay. Now look at this. If this ordinance has the same force as laws made by the Parliament, then apply. Instead of ordinance, look at this. Any law can amend the central act. A law and an ordinance will have the same enforceability. So any ordinance can amend the central act. Look at this. This statement becomes correct. Next, an ordinance can abridge a fundamental right. See, a law, any law, can it abridge the fundamental right? It cannot. You cannot violate. Any law cannot violate the fundamental right. It cannot take away the fundamental right. Then, how can ordinance take away? So, this becomes wrong. Any ordinance can come into effect from a back date. See, any law can come into effect from a back date. So, obviously, any ordinance can also come into effect from a back date. So, this is again correct. So, this is how you should always apply the wisdom in order to assess the correct or wrong answers. You should not just think that, are these statements exactly there in the book? Am I able to recollect all the statements in the book or not? Okay, that is one aspect that you should always know. Okay, alright. So, if you know this, if second statement is wrong, remove the second statement here. So, the answer here is C. Okay, so one important skill that you should always know is, when you look at a statement, your mind should never go thinking, is this statement in the book or not? You should always take the wisdom from your learning and see if you can apply that wisdom and get the answer. So, I hope this skill is clearer and you have made a note of it. So, this completes this question. Alright guys, let us go and solve this question. Understand that I consider this question as very difficult question. Why do I consider it as very difficult question is, whenever a question has very high variables, then the examiner can change any one of the variables for you to go wrong, and that is why you should be very cautious when a question has very high variables. Now I will show you how to see these variables by looking at this question. Let us first read out the question. Consider the following pairs. You have state on one side, you have description on the other side. Let us read out the question clearly. You have Arunachal Pradesh. The capital is named after a fort. This is the first variable. and the state has 2 national parks. This is the second variable. The next is Nagaland. Look at this. The state came into existence on the basis of Constitutional Amendment Act. Look at this. This is the variable 3. The next variable is, look at this, Tripura. Initially a Part C state, it became a centrally administered territory with the reorganization of states in 1956 and later attained the status of a full-fledged state. So, in this one statement, there are 3 variables. Initially a Part C state, this is 4. It became a centrally administered territory with the reorganization of states in 1956, this is 5. And later attained the status of a fully fledged state, this is 6. Now look at this, there are so many variables where the examiner can change the facts and you would fall into the trap, and that is why whenever there is a lot of variables, you should be very, very careful. And on top of that, how many of the above pairs are correctly matched? Only 1, only 2, all the 3, none. Now look at this, again they are not giving you any scope for elimination, that again makes it a little difficult. Okay, so such questions you should not worry about it. If you don't know, just move on, don't worry too much about it, don't try to study so that you can answer such questions. Okay, these are questions which are designed in order to let it go and then go to the next one. Okay, however, for the sake of discussion, let us do the answers properly. Okay, now look at this. Arunachal Pradesh, the capital is named after a fort and the state has 2 national parks. This statement is correct because if you take the capital is known as Itanagar, and this Ita, okay, ITA, Ita is the name of the fort. Okay, so that part is correct. Now the second part in this particular statement is, yes, it has 2 national parks. The national parks are Namdapap National Park and the second is Mauling National Park. Okay, these are the 2 national parks. So factually you understood what is the information about Arunachal Pradesh, so that statement is correct. The next is Nagaland. Look at this, the state came into existence on the basis of Constitutional Amendment Act. Many institutes have given this statement as correct, taking into consideration 13th Constitutional Amendment Act, but it is not true. Look at this, Nagaland became a state. Nagaland became a state by passing of Nagaland State Act 1962. So, Nagaland attained statehood in 1962 by the passing of Nagaland State Act 1962. The constitutional amendment that many people are talking about is the 13th Constitutional Amendment Act. Now, in this act, the Nagaland will be given 371 of A. So, this is nothing but special status. Okay, special status. So, basically 371 special status is given to Assam. In the same manner, 371A is inserted and special status is given to Nagaland in order to conserve their culture. Okay, so overall the state was created here in Nagaland State Act 1962 and not in Constitutional Amendment Act. So this becomes wrong. The next, coming to Tripura. Initially a Part C state, it became a centrally administered territory with the reorganization of states in 1956 and later attained the statehood, that is later attained the status of a full-fledged state. Okay, let us analyze this. Now look at this. 1947 we got our independence. 1956 we passed something called State Reorganization Act. State Reorganization Act. Now what happened in this act was the states were reorganized. The state were reorganized on the basis of linguistic lines. On the basis of linguistic lines. So this is what happened in 1956. But from 1947 to 1956, the states were divided into 3 categories: Part A, Part B and Part C. Part A is basically those territories that were British provinces. Part B were those territories that were princely states, and Part C are small territories. These are also called as centrally administered territories or chief commissioner's territories. Okay, so this is how the division was there up to 1956. And yes, initially a Part C state. So Tripura initially was a Part C state. Okay, now in 1956 when the State Reorganization Act was passed, the states were reorganized into linguistic lines and most of these Part C states went on to become what we call as union territories. Okay, so initially a Part C state, it became a centrally administered territory with the reorganization of states in 1956. In 1956, it went on to become centrally administered territories. Okay, so then look at this, then and later attained the status of full-fledged state. That is also true because Tripura attained the statehood in 1972. So overall, those 3 variables that they have given, all the 3 variables are correct. So this particular third statement is also correct. So how many of the above pairs are correctly matched? The answer is B, only 2. Now look at this, so many information that you should have with you in order to get to the answer, that is relatively less. That is, any candidate who is preparing for the exam will have relatively less clarity when you take so many variables that you have to know. So don't worry about it if you are not able to deduce the answer for such questions. Okay, learn from it and then move on. However, this completes the analysis of 52. The 52nd question, the answer is B, only 2. Alright guys, let us solve this question. Again, a very straightforward question, provided that you have studied polity very well. Okay. Look at this. With reference to India, consider the following: Interstate Council, the National Security Council, the Zonal Councils. How many of the above were established as per the provisions of the Constitution of India? Okay. Now, the question is very straightforward. If you have read normal polity, any basic book, you will be able to get the answer. So, look at this. The Interstate Council is established under Article 263. Now, why is Interstate Council established? Interstate Council is established in order to promote coordination between center and state and between states. Okay, that is the main reason why Interstate Council is basically established. Okay, the next, National Security Council. Look at this. For the first time, they established National Security Council in 1998. This is established through executive resolution. It is neither statutory body nor it is constitutional. It is established through executive resolution, and the job of this is mainly external security as well as internal security. So advising with respect to external and internal security is the main job of the National Security Council. Obviously, if it is external security and internal security, it will be headed by the Prime Minister. It will be headed by the Prime Minister. Okay. However, it is not a constitutional body. It is a body that is formed due to executive resolution. The last is zonal councils. Now look at this. Why were zonal councils formed? Whenever you read a body, you should always understand why were they formed. You will never forget it. Why am I telling you these reasons? Is because I am trying to tell you the cause why. If you understand the why, you will not forget. If you just buy out the names and the articles, you will forget. So that is one of the learning that you have to take. So when you take zonal councils, look at this. State Reorganization Act. When State Reorganization Act 1956 was passed, here, as I told you, the states were divided on the basis of linguistic lines. When the states were divided on the basis of linguistic lines, there was chances of rise of regionalism. Now, the main job was to reduce regionalism in India, and to reduce regionalism in India, they created what you call as zonal councils. Okay, so zonal councils were created when State Reorganization Act 1956 was enacted. So what they did, they created 5 zonal councils. Okay, they created 5 zonal councils. You have North, West, East, South and Central. So these are the 5 different zonal councils. Okay, so that is the main job why they created. Obviously, if we have to reduce regionalism, regionalism is a security issue or can become a security issue. That's why it is headed by this council. All these zonal councils are headed by Home Minister. And obviously, the chief ministers are part of it, but Home Minister is the head of this zonal councils. Now, understand that I have not written Northeast here. Now comes Northeast. In 1971, they established what you call as Northeast Council Act. In this Northeast Council Act, they add all the northeastern states and create the Northeastern Zonal Council. Northeastern Zonal Council. Look at this. This Northeastern Zonal Council is again headed by the Home Minister. Okay, but this zonal council consists of all the CMs, that is chief ministers of the states, plus all the governors of the northeastern states. Okay, so overall, as I told you, if you understand the reason why they are formed, you will never forget the body. Okay, so whenever you are reading in polity any constitutional body or any statutory body or any body that is formed by executive resolution, make sure that you understand why and you will never forget that body. Okay, so overall, if you see, this alone is a constitutional body, this is executive body, this is a statutory body. So how many of the above were established as per the provisions of the Constitution? Only 1. The answer here for 53rd is A, only 1. Alright, let us move on. Alright guys, let's go ahead and solve this question. Look at this. Again, this question can be solved with just basic knowledge. That's why your basics in clearing prelims becomes very, very important. Please focus on your basics. Let us see this. Consider the following statements. The Constitution of India explicitly mentions that in certain spheres, the governor of the state acts in his or her own discretion. This is the first statement. The second statement is the President of India can, of his or her own, reserve a bill passed by a state legislature for his or her own consideration without it being forwarded by the governor of the state concerned. read the second statement again and see how extreme it is. Look at this. The President of India can, of his or her own, reserve a bill passed by a state legislature for his or her own consideration without it being forwarded by the governor of the state concerned. Can this be possible? Though India is a union of states, though India is quasi-federal, understand that federalism itself is a basic structure, and this is too extreme that spoils the center-state relations. If the president can, out of the discretion, can take any legislature bill without the consideration of the governor, then it becomes too extreme to have a power in the hands of the president. So this particular statement can never be true. Okay, just with the wisdom you will understand that this is too an extreme a statement. That is why knowing the philosophy of Indian democracy and Indian democratic structure itself will help you to deduce a lot of answers in polity. Now look at this. The Constitution of India explicitly mentions that in certain spheres the governor of the state acts in his or her own discretion. Now anyone who has studied polity knows that governor has certain discretionary functions. Now those functions, are they explicitly mentioned or not? This is where the doubt comes. People who have just studied some book will always have doubts because they have not studied the parts of the constitution properly. That is why take the bare constitution. Take the bare constitution, and when you take the bare constitution, the constitution is always written in different parts. Part 1, part 2, part 3. So when you take that bare constitution and look at the parts, in the parts you will see different articles that are there within that part. So when you look at that article and the title of that article, you will easily get to know that according to article 163, it says that the governor has to act in accordance to the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by Chief Minister. Okay, this is there, but this is where you stop if you are reading normal books. But if you have gone through the article titles in the Constitution part wise, then you will see the entire title of Article 163 that says that the governor will act according to the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister, but can act with discretion. Can act with discretion in certain matters. Okay, not only that, look at this. When the question arises, if the matter is discretionary, then the governor's decision is final. I hope you understand this. So this philosophy or this entire thing is written in the title of Article 163 that usually you will get if you read the constitutional titles properly, not by reading some book. Okay, I am not telling you to complicate your preparation. Once you have read the entire polity, take the bare constitution, look at all the parts and look at all the articles and their titles, you will get a very good idea to answer such questions. Okay, anyways, so the first statement is correct, the second statement is wrong. So which of the statements given above are correct? The answer is one only. I hope you got the learning. The learning is you should always know the titles of the articles very well, and that will come only with reading by reading through different parts of the constitution and what articles come inside them. Okay. However, the pretty straightforward question, the first statement is correct, the second statement is wrong, the answer is A, one only. Alright guys, let us solve this question. Again, a very simple and very easy question, and I know that everyone can solve this, but let us complete this. Consider the following pairs. Provision in the Constitution of India. On the other side you have stated under. First you have separation of judiciary from the executive in the public services of the state. Directive principles of the state policy. Next, valuing and preserving of the rich heritage of our composite culture, the fundamental duties. Next, prohibition of employment of children below the age of 14 years in factories. Next is fundamental rights. How many of the above pairs are correctly matched? Only one, only two, all the three, and none. Okay. Now, if you have studied polity, you should have in and out knowledge about part 3. You should have in and out knowledge about all the parts, but in general, this is a recurring theme. Every year questions will come from that. So you should have a very, very good knowledge about fundamental rights, DPSPs and FDs. So part 3, part 4 and part 4A. You should have a very good idea about it. Especially part 3 is very, very important. However, all the three are important. Part 3 as article 12 to 35. Here you have 36 to 51, and this is where article 51 of A. Okay, so this was introduced in the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay, so these are very, very important. Not only that, you should have an idea about article 14 or article 15 or article 16. The sub clauses under that also you should have a very good idea. Okay, for example, article 15 of 1, 15 of 2, 15 of 3, 15 of 4. What is it? That level of detail, you should have an idea about these parts. Why? Because recurring theme, you should always have good depth in your knowledge. Okay, anyways, separation of judiciary from the executive in the public services of the state. Yes, it is DPSP, article 50. Next, valuing and preserving of the rich heritage of our composite culture, fundamental duties. Yes, it is article 51 of A of F. Next, prohibition of employment of children below the age of 14 years in the factories. Yes, this is also correct. Here it is obviously article prohibition of employment, article 24. Okay. How many of the above pairs are correctly matched? All the three are correctly matched. So the answer is C. Okay, the answer is C. Again, not D. We have that presumption that all the above will always be in the D. Please don't fall for it. The option is C. So for 55th question, the answer is C. All right, let us solve this question. Very interesting question, and again, it requires some level of wisdom that you need to apply, not just textbook knowledge. Let us look at it. Consider the following statements. With reference to the Constitution of India, if an area in the state is declared as a scheduled area under the 5th schedule, look at this. They have given two statements. The state government loses its executive power in such areas and the local body assumes total administration. Okay, next statement. The union government can take over the total administration of such areas under certain circumstances on the recommendations of the governor. Okay, this is the second statement. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. Alright, now let us solve it properly. See, when they declare an area scheduled area, who will declare the area scheduled area? It is the president. The president can declare an area as scheduled area. Now, when the president declares an area as scheduled area under the 5th schedule, now look at this, you have to form something called Tribal Advisory Council. Tribal Advisory Council. Now, this Tribal Advisory Council consists of 20 members. Now, amongst these 20 members, 3/4 of the members should be from the MLAs who belong to those tribes. 3/4 of them are MLAs who belong to those tribes. Okay. Now, tribal advisory body, they are advising. The name only says they are advisory body. They will advise for the welfare of the tribes in that particular area. Next, 3/4 of those members are MLAs belonging to the scheduled tribes. If they are MLAs, they have to abide by whom? President or chief minister or governor? They have to abide by the chief minister, because MLAs are elected. MLAs themselves have elected a leader who is nothing but chief minister. So if this is the case, how can the state lose any power there? So look at this, the state government loses its executive power in such areas and the local body assumes total administration. If you know this wisdom, you will be easily knowing that it is not true. Now look at this, the union government can take over the total administration of such areas under certain circumstances on the recommendations of the governor. Don't you think that this is going like emergency? And hence, this also is too extreme. Okay, so if you have this wisdom, you can get it. Other way of getting the answer is the language of the statements. Okay, the language of the statements. Look at this. If you look at the language of the statement, the state government loses its executive power in such areas and a local body assumes total administration. If they have not added total, then it wouldn't have seemed to be so extreme. But because they have added total, it becomes very extreme. So look at this. The language of the statement is made extreme so that you should not have any doubt that that statement is wrong. So it becomes wrong. Next, the union government can take over the total administration of such areas. Again, look at this. It is becoming too extreme. All right. So just by understanding the language of that particular statement, you should know that both the statements are wrong. So overall, which of the statements given above is or are correct? Neither 1 nor 2. So I have taught you how to use the wisdom to get the answer. I have also taught you how to use the language to get the answer. This is how you should always develop skills, multiple ways in order to deduce the answer. Okay, now let us solve this question. Again, this question requires only common sense. I keep telling common sense because I want to reinforce the point in your mind that having a proper wisdom and common sense itself is enough to clear the prelims exam. That is why I keep reinforcing that in your mind. Anyways, let us go and solve this. Look at this. With reference to India, consider the following pairs. On one side you have organization, on the other side you have union ministry, and this is the match of following. Let us see this. The National Automotive Board, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The COIR Board, Ministry of Heavy Industries. The National Center for Trade and Information, Ministry of MSMEs, that is Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. How many of the above pairs are correctly matched? Okay, two things I want you to understand. Whenever they ask you match the following, whenever they ask you match the following, if there are 3 variables here and if there are 3 variables here, usually what UPSC does is, UPSC usually interchanges them. Okay, it usually interchanges them. Okay, there shall be interchanges. So see if this will make sense with this or this will make sense with this, you will try to get the answer anyways. But that is one of the skills that I'm just trying to tell you. So keep an eye on interchanging of the variables. Okay, next, coming to this. Now, when they ask such question, first with your wisdom, try and understand Ministry of Commerce and Industry. If you look at the name of Ministry of Commerce and Industry, what do you think their main responsibility is? Their main responsibility is, when they say commerce and industry, the main responsibility is trade. The next is Ministry of Heavy Industries. That means their main responsibility is heavy machineries. Heavy or large machinery. Okay, that is what is their main responsibility. Ministry of MSMEs, that is micro, small and medium enterprises. As you can see here, these are small industries. These are small industries. Okay. Overall, if I have to just tell what is the focus area of these ministries, I can tell trade, heavy machineries and small industries. Now come this side. National Automotive Board. Automotive mainly takes charge of automobiles. So automobiles are small machinery or large machinery? Large machinery. So very high probability that it is handled by Ministry of Heavy Industries. Coir Board. Coir is nothing but the fiber part of the coconut. The fiber part of the coconut, the coir, is used in order to make ropes, blankets, gunny bags and other things. So if you take the coir board, they mainly are small industries. So it is mainly handled by Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. The National Center for Trade and Information. Look at this. Trade, if they are telling trade, automatically it should become this. So with the help of your wisdom, try to understand what is the focus area, and with that, if you can correlate, you can understand that how many of the above pairs are correctly matched. The answer will be none. But look at this. If you have to correlate in this way, if you have to use your wisdom and common sense to get the answer, you have to stay calm in the exam and you should have time. If you are in a rush, your mind will not work like this. Okay. So please make sure that you always manage time better and make sure that you stay calm. Definitely your mind will develop the wisdom in order to get the answer like this. However, the answer for this is D. None of the above. They are incorrectly matched. And one of the skills that you have learned is this. They always interchange the variables. So you should always be aware of it. Just look here and there. That is, just look on other neighboring or adjacent options. See if it is making sense. That means they have interchanged. Okay. So this completes the question of 57. Okay guys, let us solve this question. Again, a simple and straightforward question if you know the articles very well or the titles of the articles very well. Look at this. Consider the following subjects under the Constitution of India. List 1, Union List in the 7th schedule, extent of the executive power of the state, conditions of the governor's office. For a constitutional amendment with respect to which of the above, ratification by the legislatures of not less than 1/2 of the state is required before presenting the bill to the President of India for assent. 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3 only. Okay. One way to come to the answer is conditions of the office of governor's office. Look at this. Governor, the governor's tenure is on the pleasure of the president. Governor's tenure depends on the pleasure of the president. Yes or no? It is a president who appoints a governor and it is up to the president to remove the governor or transfer the governor. Okay. There is no role of the state at all. If the tenure is on the pleasure of the president, why does any conditions depend on the amendment that requires ratification from the states? So with that, you know that the third statement is wrong. If you know the third statement is wrong, look at this. The answer is A, 1 and 2. Okay, you can come to this conclusion. Again, very simply you can eliminate and get the conclusion. But what if they are given only 1 is true, only 2 is true, only 3 is true, only 3 is true or none is true, then you should have known this. Now, many students will try to use common sense to know whether this is whether state, half of the state legislature assent is required or not for these two. But there is nothing to use common sense because in Article 368 of 2, they have given 7 conditions. They have given 7 conditions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is not required. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have given 7 conditions where you need the ratification of the legislature of not less than 1/2 of the states for assent for any constitutional amendment. Now, what are the 7 conditions? In the 7 conditions, the 2 conditions are here itself. One is 7th schedule. Okay, one is 7th schedule. And the second is the executive power. Okay, the extent of the executive power. Executive power. What is the third one? The third one is election of the president. Why do you think election of the president requires assent from the state? Is because the assent of the state is required because the the state legislatures themselves participate in the election of the president. That's why you need the assent of the half of the states. The next is, if you want the distribution of legislative powers, any distribution of legislative powers, you need the assent of the state. That is the next one. The next is Supreme Courts and High Courts. Okay. Now look at this, Supreme Courts and High Courts. We have integrated judiciary that enforces both state laws and central laws. Hence, you need the ratification of half of the states. The sixth one is representation. Representation of states. Representation of states in Rajya Sabha. Representation of states in Rajya Sabha. This is the sixth one. The seventh one is, if you want to amend Article 368 itself, that is amendment to the constitution, any amendment to the constitution itself, that is the procedure, amendment procedure to the constitution. If you want to make changes to Article 366 itself, this Article 368 talks about the procedure of amendment. If you want to bring any changes to the procedure, obviously you need to take half of the state legislature. So overall, Article 368 of 2 talks about these 7 conditions where you need the ratification of half of the state legislature for the Constitutional Amendment Act to be enforced. Okay. Overall, if you would have understood all the titles of the articles, then you would always get to know this. Otherwise, what happens in the textbook, they do not specify that there is a list called Article 368 of 2 which has 7 explicit list that is telling like this. Okay. I hope you understood this. However, with simple elimination technique, you will get the answer. But overall, I am just trying to teach you the wisdom of a particular subject called polity. Okay. This completes 58. Alright guys, let us look at this question. Again, if you know the articles and its titles properly, you will be able to answer this question. Now, let us read out the question first. With reference to the Indian polity, consider the following statements. The governor of a state is not answerable to any court for the exercise and performance of the powers and duties of his or her office. Okay. Statement 2. No criminal proceedings shall be instituted or continued against the governor during his or her term of office. Let us look at the third one. Members of the state legislature are not liable to any proceedings in any court in respect of anything that is said within the house. Now look at this. They are using the word any. They are using the word here shall be instituted or considered against no. They are using again the word any. Okay. It appears like the statement is too extreme and it may not be true. But that is where we should not always go on that wisdom of extreme statements. Okay. Now look at this. If you have read the bare constitution and if you have read the constitution in parts, and within the parts if you have read all the articles and their titles, you will know that these are nothing but article titles that they have taken and put it here. Okay. So basically this is from Article 361, this is from Article 361 and this is from Article 194. Okay. If you remember, there is something called Part 19. There is something called Part 19 of the Constitution. Part 19 of the Constitution is known as miscellaneous part. And this miscellaneous part, one part of this miscellaneous part of the Indian Constitution is protection of high offices such as president and governor. And in that you have Article 361 which provides absolute immunity. Okay, which provides absolute immunity for president as well as governor to not be answerable to any court for the exercise and performance of the powers and duties of his or her office. Now, always know why. Why are they giving absolute immunity to the president and governor? Is because the president or governor is a nominal head. So, they are a nominal head who are going to act in accordance to the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by either Prime Minister or Chief Minister. So, since they are nominal head, they have given the absolute immunity. And here, no criminal proceedings shall be instituted or continued against the governor during his or her term. Again, this is an immunity power that is given according to the Part 19 of the Indian Constitution. So, whatever the wordings that they have used, they have taken the title and they have used it here. So, if you know the title of that particular article, you will know that the statement 1 and statement 2 are correct. Again, members of the state legislature are not liable to any proceedings in any court in respect to anything that is said within the house. Yes or no? This is a immunity. This is a immunity, that is a parliamentary immunity. Okay, this immunity allows the legislator to talk without any fear. And that is very, very important, because at the end of the day, Parliament is the house to debate and to express the genuine grievances. Yes or no? So if they have to express the genuine grievances, you have to give them this immunity. And hence, Article 194 provides them this immunity. So overall, if you take these three statements, though it appears too extreme, it is not too extreme. It is there in the Constitution, in the article titles itself. So which of the statements given above are correct? 1, 2 and 3 are correct. So this completes the question number 59. Okay guys, let us solve this question. One learning when you're solving this question is, whenever you come across new institutions when you're solving your mock tests, three things that you should always focus upon. One, when was that institution formed? Under which ministry does that institution come? And what is its core functions? Automatically it will have its peripheral functions, which is very broad, but what are its core functions? So these are the three things that you should track. Yes, when you're solving a lot of tests, you will come across a lot of institutions. So don't try to read it in depth. Just know these three basic dimensions. Okay. Now let us look at this. Consider the following activities: production of crude oil, refining, storage and distribution of petroleum, marketing and sale of petroleum products, production of natural gas. So you have 4 statements here. How many of the above activities are regulated by the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board in our country? Okay, that is PNGRB, Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board in our country. Obviously, there is nothing called logic that you can apply. You should have some level of idea about it. The only thing I would like to say is, if you have just read the core functions of PNGRB, the core functions of PNGRB is to regulate downstream activities. Is to regulate downstream activities and not upstream activities. Okay, so if you look at this very carefully, you can divide this entire options into 2 types. Production means upstream. Okay, so production means upstream. The next, refining, storage and distribution. This is downstream. The next is marketing, sale of petroleum products. This is again downstream. The next is production of natural gas. When they say production, it is upstream. Okay, so overall, PNGRB takes care or regulates downstream activities. So there are 2 downstream activities. That means the option is only 2. Again, you should have some idea to solve it. I would not say that with wisdom you can answer it. It is not true. It is not correct to tell like that. If you have some idea, you can answer it. Otherwise, it becomes a little difficult questions. Don't worry about it. In your mock test, whenever you come across institutions, try to have some idea about its core functions, which ministry and when it was formed. That is the learning that you have to take. Anyways, this completes question number 60. Okay, this question is a very interesting question, which actually checks how good you are in your basic concepts of economy, especially fiscal deficit, primary deficit and revenue deficit. Okay, let us look at this. Suppose the revenue expenditure is 80,000 crores and the revenue receipts of the government are 60,000 crores. The government budget also shows borrowings of 10,000 crores and interest payments of 6,000 crores. Which of the following statements are correct? So you have revenue expenditure, you have revenue receipts, then you have the borrowings, then you have the interest payments. So these are the 4 variables that they have given. Okay. Now, revenue deficit is 20,000 crores, fiscal deficit is 10,000 crores, primary deficit is 4,000 crores. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3. Okay. Now, look at this. What is revenue? There are 3 things that you should understand. What is revenue deficit? What is fiscal deficit? What is primary deficit? Very quickly you should make the calculations. Revenue deficit means revenue expenditure, revenue receipts minus revenue expenditure. Okay. So the revenue receipts, revenue expenditure is 80,000 crore. Revenue receipts is 60,000 crore. Okay. So the difference for the revenue deficit is 20,000 crores. So this answer becomes correct. Now look at this. What is fiscal deficit? If you take fiscal deficit is total expenditure minus non-debt receipts. Total expenditure minus non-debt receipts. So total expenditure minus non-debt receipts means expenditure minus revenue. That is, expenditure minus revenue means there is a deficit here. This deficit is what is called fiscal deficit. Now this deficit has to be overcome by borrowings. It has to be overcome by borrowings. So at the end of the day, fiscal deficit is nothing but total borrowings of the government. So look at this. The government budget also shows borrowings of 10,000 crores. So fiscal deficit is nothing but total borrowings. Borrowings they are telling us 10,000 crores. So here the fiscal deficit is 10,000 crores. Next, primary deficit. What is primary deficit? Primary deficit means fiscal deficit minus interest payments. Okay, that is, they want to check the deficit for that year. Interest payment is basically the borrowings of previous year. Yes or no? Since it's borrowings of previous year, and if you want to know exactly what is the deficit in this particular year, so we have to remove the interest payments. So from 10,000 crores, if you remove 6,000 crores, you get the answer as 4,000 crores. So look at this, primary deficit is 4,000 crores. Select the correct answer using the code. All the three are correct. So the answer is D. Alright. So this has to be done very, very quickly because these are very simple questions that actually checks your basic conceptual clarity. In that hurry, if you don't have time, if you are in a rush, that is where you have greater scope to go wrong. That is why time management is the key. The conceptual basic clarity is really the key here. Okay. So this completes the 61st question. Okay guys, let us look at this question. Again, a very, very interesting question. Look at it. India is one of the founding members of the International North-South Transport Corridor, that is INSTC, a multimodal transportation corridor which will connect. You have option A, India to Central Asia to Europe via Iran, India to Central Asia via China, India to Southeast Asia through Bangladesh and Myanmar, India to Europe through Azerbaijan. Okay, so INSTC, as the name suggests, International North-South Transport Corridor. So it has to go from south to north, somewhere like this. Now look, let India to Central Asia to Europe to Iran. Let us keep it aside. India to Central Asia via China. Okay, so India to Central Asia via China. See, it comes something like this. Okay, so there is very high probability that this cannot be true. Next, India to Southeast Asia through Bangladesh and Myanmar. So it goes something like this. So this also cannot be true. Now you will come to two statements that are very close. One is India to Central Asia to Europe via Iran. So India to Central Asia to Europe via Iran. This is one. The next is India to Europe through Azerbaijan. India to Europe through Azerbaijan. Okay. Now look at it. This is India to Central Asia to Europe via Iran. This is India to Europe via Azerbaijan. This is option A and this is option D. Now if you look at the two transport corridors, which do you think is more comprehensive? Which do you think has much better probability to be called as International North-South Transport Corridor? Or which do you think is that corridor that connects most of the places as we go from India to Europe? Okay, think on those lines. If you think on those lines, you will see that the answer is A because it looks more comprehensive. I am telling this with the presumption that, let us say that you have not heard about International North-South Transport Corridor. If you are there in that stage, then how can you use your wisdom to come to the answer that A is the correct answer? Now, most of the people would have known this. So for them, the question would be very easy. That is okay for them. You should know that the answer is A. You will know that the answer is A. For those people who might have not heard, how can you use your wisdom and lines of thought to deduce the answer? That is what I am trying to tell you. So the answer here is A. That is International North-South Transport Corridor. It connects India to Central Asia to Europe via Iran because that is more comprehensive compared to this. Okay, alright. So the answer is A for the 62nd question. Okay guys, let us do this question. Again, this is a question that I consider it as difficult because it depends on your knowing the factual information rather than using your lines of thought. But let us see if we can solve this. Consider the following statements. We have statement 1. Of the two major ethanol producers in the world, that is Brazil and the United States of America, the former produces more ethanol than the latter. What they are telling is Brazil is the largest producer, second largest is United States of America. That is what the statement says. Statement 2. Unlike in the United States of America, where corn is the principal feedstock for ethanol production, sugar cane is the principal feedstock for ethanol production in Brazil. Okay, this is statement 2. Okay. Now, which one of the following is correct in respect of the above statements? Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 explains statement 1. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, but statement 2 does not explain statement 1. Statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is not correct. Statement 1 is not correct, but statement 2 is correct. Look at this. Now, you have to know this information to answer, but look at this. Statement 2, if you take, unlike in the United States of America, where corn is the principal feedstock for ethanol production, sugarcane is the principal feedstock for ethanol production in Brazil. Brazil is the largest sugar producer in the world. If it is the largest sugar producer in the world, automatically it has surplus of sugarcane. From the sugarcane, there is very high chances to produce ethanol. So with that line of thought, I can come to the conclusion that statement 2 is correct. So when I know statement 2 is correct, I can only eliminate this. All the other three will remain. That is why I told you this question becomes a little difficult. You should know who is the largest ethanol producer in the world. Okay, there you should not guess. If you know, you have to take a call. Now, look at this. Actually, I keep telling you that they always do adla badli. That is, they always interchange. That is what they have interchanged. Brazil is the second largest producer. United States is the first largest producer. Okay, so Brazil is second and USA is first. And hence, this entire statement becomes wrong. So, the answer here is statement 1 is not correct, but statement 2 is correct. This is the answer. I would not expect you to know the answer with wisdom. You should know that information to answer this, and that is okay. There will always be few questions that will purely be based on factual information. Don't worry too much about it. If you know, you can answer. Otherwise, it is fine. Okay. Alright. So, this completes the 63rd question. Okay guys, let us solve this question. Again, this question can be solved with the help of common sense. Sometimes they will give you technical words and your mind will get fixated on the technical word. You don't have to get fixated. Think calmly and you will get the answer. Listen to this very, very carefully. Let me read out the question first. The World Bank warned that India could become one of the first places where wet bulb temperatures routinely exceed 35 degrees Celsius. Which of the following statement best reflects the implication? Implication means consequences of the above said report. Okay. Now, first statement is peninsular India will most likely suffer from flooding, tropical cyclones and droughts. Second statement, the survival of animals including humans will be affected as shedding of their body heat through perspiration becomes difficult. Okay. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. Okay. Now, one way to answer this question is to know the conceptual clarity of what exactly is this wet bulb temperature. With this knowledge, you can answer what exactly they are talking about. The second is using your wisdom. When I say wisdom, this is a street smartish way of answering the question. That street smartness will come from solving more mock tests. It will not come from sitting and hearing some class. Look at this. Now, the World Bank warned. Warned means it has to be something negative. Okay. The World Bank warned that India could become one of the first places where wet bulb temperatures routinely exceed 35 degrees. Forget you don't know what is wet bulb temperature, it is okay. What you should know is wet bulb temperature is routinely exceeding 35 degrees means at the outset you can understand that India is getting warmer and warmer. This is something that you can understand. With that, India is becoming warmer and warmer. If you understand that much, come to this. If India is becoming more and more warmer, peninsular India will most likely suffer from flooding, tropical cyclones and droughts. If India is becoming warmer and warmer, don't you think these are all consequences of global warming? And one more thing is, look at this, most likely. They themselves are using that word most likely. That means 100% this statement will always be true. Okay. This is how street smartish way of thinking you can come to that conclusion. Next, look at this. The survival of animals, including humans, will be affected as shedding of their body heat through perspiration becomes difficult. Okay. Obviously, they are warning that there is something negative, and obviously this statement is also telling that there is going to be some negative consequence. So with that, we can know that this statement is consistent with whatever the warning is happening. Second, look at this, the survival of animals including humans will be affected. This affected is a very, very broad term. Even if it affects minutely, that means that it is affected. So since it is a very broad term that they are using, this affected, there are very high chances that this statement also can be correct. So with that street smartness, you can come to the conclusion that amongst the two statements, both 1 and 2 can be the correct answer. So this is the street smart way of thinking. This is what you have to develop, and that will not come by seeing some classes or going to some courses. It will always come by sitting and solving a lot of questions. Okay. Now let us understand what is wet bulb temperature, the conceptual level. Okay. Now if I take a thermometer, and if I round it, if I cover it up with the wet cloth, and if I expose this to the atmosphere, what will be the drop in temperature? Okay, what will be the drop in temperature? That is what is wet bulb temperature. Now, whenever I take a thermometer and cover it with a wet cloth, this wet cloth will undergo evaporation. When it undergoes evaporation, evaporation is an endothermic process. Endothermic means it absorbs heat. Evaporation is a endothermic process. When it absorbs heat, the reading in the thermometer should reduce. Okay. Now, evaporation, when it absorbs heat, the thermometer reading should reduce. What they are telling is wet bulb temperature routinely exceeds 35 degrees. That means it is not reducing. Now, evaporation is endothermic, that absorbs, energy, and hence the heat will reduce. But when will evaporation not work is, let us say that I have taken the thermometer, I have covered it with wet cloth, I am exposing it to the atmosphere, but the atmosphere already has high humidity. When the atmosphere has high humidity, then the evaporation is retarded. The evaporation is retarded. Understand October heat. In India, we experience October heat. That October heat is because the evaporation from our body gets retarded. Okay. Anyways, when the evaporation gets retarded, because in the atmosphere already there is high humidity. So the whatever humidity that comes from our body is not getting evaporated. That's why we don't get that cooling effect. Okay. So when you have high humidity, evaporation gets retarded. When the evaporation gets retarded, evaporation is retarded. When the evaporation gets retarded, automatically the temperature does not drop. The temperature will not drop. So when the temperature does not drop, that is what they are telling, wet bulb temperature is higher. Okay. So high humidity means high humidity happens when a region is warmer. Okay, that is what they are trying to tell you. Overall, understand what is evaporation. Evaporation is nothing but the water becoming water vapor. Evaporation always happens in high energy environment, that means high temperature environment. However, the body will sweat, or even the plants will sweat in the form of transpiration. Why do we sweat? Why does the plant transpire? We always sweat, or the plants will always undergo transpiration in high energy or high temperature environment, because that is our body's way of cooling down. When we perspire, that is when we sweat, the water from our pore spaces come out, that water is converted into water vapor, that is what is evaporation. When the evaporation happens, it absorbs the energy or it absorbs the heat, and that is why our body cools down. Hence, evaporation or transpiration is a cooling mechanism. However, when the atmosphere itself has high humidity, irrespective of how much we sweat, that sweat does not convert into water vapor because already the humidity is very high. That is why we have that oppressive effect, and that oppressive effect is what is known as October heat. But overall, that is what they are telling in this second statement. The survival of animals, including humans, will be affected as shedding of their body heat through perspiration becomes difficult. Why? Because atmospheric humidity is already high, so evaporation is retarded. So overall, with that conceptual level, you can understand that both the statements become true, and the answer for this is C. So this completes the question number 64. Okay guys, look at this question. Very, very nice question, very nicely framed in order to trick you. Okay, if you are in a rush, if you are rushing to finish the paper, you will definitely go wrong, because they have given you irrelevant information just to throw you off. So be very, very careful. That is why when you are solving prelims paper, you should never be in a rush. Let us read out the question first. A country's fiscal deficit stands at 50,000 crores. It is receiving 10,000 crores through non-debt creating capital receipts. The country's interest liabilities are 1,500 crores. What is the gross primary deficit? Okay, we already know what is primary deficit. Primary deficit is nothing but fiscal deficit minus interest payments. And why is it that we are interested in primary deficit is because fiscal deficit consists of all borrowings. Now, this borrowings will include those borrowings that we are taking in order to service the loans we have taken in previous years. But if we are interested only in the borrowings of current year, then we have to remove all the interest payments, because interest payments are nothing but payments that are done for borrowings of previous year. So if I want only the borrowings of this year, I have to remove the interest payment from the fiscal deficit. When I remove the interest payment from the fiscal deficit, I will come back to primary deficit. That is the main reason why primary deficit becomes important, because we will understand what is the borrowings in the current year. What is the borrowings in the current year? Okay. So now look at this. For primary deficit, you need fiscal deficit and interest payment. A country's fiscal deficit stands at 50,000 crores. So you have 50,000 crores here. It is receiving 10,000 crores through non-debt creating capital receipts. Okay, let us keep this aside. The country's interest liabilities are 1,500 crores. 1,500 crores. Okay. Then what is the gross primary deficit? You just have to take the difference of this. This will come up to 48,500 crores. Look at this. So the answer is A. But I know that to look at it at the outset, it is very, very simple. But when you are in a rush, when you are trying to complete the paper very quickly, you will always think, or you will take 2-3 minutes to think, why has UPSC given this? Or am I missing something? Should I add it somewhere? So that 2-3 minutes extra that you take to think what is going wrong here, that is what UPSC also wants. So it should be very, very good in managing your time. If you're managing your time, your nerves are calm and you will easily identify this is an irrelevant information. Okay, and that is why time management becomes very, very critical in your prelims exam as well as prelims success. Okay, anyways, the answer for 65th is, answer is A, option A, that is 48,500 crores. Okay guys, let us solve this question. One learning from this question, I have told you before also, I am telling you now also, when the question appears too difficult, there will be an easy way out, so look at it very carefully. They'll always give you an easy way out if the question is very, very difficult. Now look at this. At the outset, this question seems to be very taxing. It seems to be very time consuming. Let us read out the question first. Which of the following statements with regards to the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission of India are correct? It has recommended grants of 4,800 crore rupees from the year 2022-23 to the year 2025-26 for incentivizing states to enhance educational outcomes. Next, 45% of the net proceeds of the union taxes are to be shared with the states. Next, 45,000 crore rupees are to be kept as performance-based incentives for all the states for carrying out agricultural reforms. Last point, it reintroduced the tax effort criteria to reward fiscal performance. Select the correct answer using the code given below: 1, 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 4, 1, 3 and 4, 2, 3 and 4. As you can see, it appears taxing and it appears time consuming, but one person or every individual or every UPSC aspirant who has read about 15th Finance Commission recommendation will know one thing for sure, that this is definitely wrong. Okay, we know that 15th Finance Commission has recommended 41% of the net proceeds of the union taxes are to be shared with the states. 14th Finance Commission had recommended 42%, but the 15th Finance Commission recommends 41%. 1% they have accounted for the UTs of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. This everyone will know. So if you know that this second statement is wrong, look at this. Second statement is there in three options. So I can remove these three options. I can come to the conclusion that the answer is 1, 3 and 4. So one learning from this is, just by reading first statement, don't think or come to the conclusion that the question appears difficult and I will not be able to get the answer. Don't worry about it. Read calmly. You will always get a way out whenever the question appears to be difficult. So I hope you understood this. Here, now you understood what is 15th Finance Commission recommendations. You saw that 1, 3 and 4 is correct. Now for the concurrent years, make sure that the 16th Finance Commission recommendation is out. So read this carefully. Next time when they ask about 16th Finance Commission recommendation, they may not give such easy way out. So read the criterias and also read what are the important recommendations. Okay, so this 66th question, the answer is C. Alright guys, now let us look at this question. Again, you can answer it from conceptual level. If you know the concepts, you can answer it, or you can also answer it with just wisdom or common sense. Look at this. Consider the following statements in respect of International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, that is IBRD. You should have heard about IBRD. Every serious aspirant who has studied for this exam will know what exactly is IBRD. That much you should know. Now, it provides loans and guarantees to middle income countries. Let us keep it there. It works single-handedly to help developing countries to reduce poverty. Look at this, single-handedly. Next, it was established to help Europe rebuild after the World War II. Let us assume that you don't know about this, you have some doubt about this, but this can never be true. It works single-handedly to help developing countries to reduce poverty. How can reduction of poverty be done single-handedly by one institution? Okay, so this is not correct. So if you remove this, look at this, if you remove this, the answer is C. Okay, now just by removing one option in this particular question, you are able to get the answer. This is done by design. Don't think that UPSC does not know this. UPSC is purposely putting such easy questions so that in that time constraint, you should always find some easy questions also. But if you are not able to manage time, then this easy question will also go on to become difficult because your mind will not work in a calm manner, and hence time management becomes very, very critical. So understand that easy questions are there for you by design. It is not that UPSC doesn't know that by removing this, you can get the answer. It knows it. It is putting it by design. Okay, but it is your responsibility to go correct every time that you come across such questions. You cannot go wrong. If you go wrong, your probability of clearing prelims itself will drop. Okay, so this is about 67th question. Now, conceptual level, we should understand that whenever we say World Bank Group, you have this International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, then you have International Development Association, then you have International Financial Corporation, then you have Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, and then you have International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. So look at this. This 5 bodies put together is what is called as World Bank Group. Now 1 and 2, this together, these 2 bodies together is what is called as World Bank. It is called as World Bank. Now IBRD basically gives soft loans to developing countries. It gives soft loans to developing countries, and IDA gives loans to poorest countries. Poorest countries. Now, if you have to be a member of IBRD and IDA, it is necessary that you have to first be the member of IMF. Okay, because it is the IMF that will take care of your balance of payment, to monitor your balance of payment so that you don't reach the BOP crisis. IMF will take care of it. Hence, first you have to go to this IMF and then become a member of IBRD and IDA. Otherwise, what happens? You will take the loan and you will use it for consumption purposes, and hence you will eventually reach BOP crisis. So, IMF should always be there to make sure that you are using the loans properly for capital allocation. Okay, that is why first you have to be the member of IMF, then you can be the member of this. Next, IFC, International Financial Corporation, this basically is there to support or to encourage private investments in middle income countries. Okay, the next, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, this basically provides guarantee. That means it provides insurance to these private companies which invest in middle income countries. The next is International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. This is an arbitration body. So any disputes that happen, this arbitration takes place in International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. Now understand that India is a member of these 4. India is not a member. India is not a member of ICSID. So overall, this is the conceptual knowledge of what exactly is the World Bank and World Bank Group. However, the answer for the 67th one is, answer is C. Alright guys, let us solve this question. Again, I am going to teach you a principle that you can apply whenever they give you 2 variables and one variable is relatively advanced compared to the other. For example, if they ask you what is volt and volt 4E, you should know that one is advanced compared to the other. In the same manner, if you take these 2 variables, RTGS and NEFT, RTGS is real-time gross settlement and NEFT is National Electronic Fund Transfer. So if you take RTGS and NEFT, you know that RTGS is relatively advanced compared to NEFT. Okay, it is relatively advanced compared to NEFT. That much is enough. Okay, now look at this. In RTGS, first let us read out the question. Consider the following statements in respect of RTGS and NEFT. In RTGS, the settlement time is instantaneous, while in case of NEFT, it takes some time to settle payments. Okay, again, some time to settle payments. Let's keep it there. In RTGS, the customer is charged for inward transactions, while that is not the case for NEFT. Okay, next, operating hours for RTGS are restricted on certain days, while this is not true for NEFT. Now, with common wisdom or basic common sense, if you know that something is advanced, it will have better functionality, it will have less restrictions. Now, look at this. RTGS, the settlement time is instantaneous, while in the case of NEFT, it takes some time to settle payments. The name only says real time. When the name says real time, automatically the first statement should be true. Okay, now look. In RTGS, the customer is charged for inward transactions, while it is not the case for NEFT. Understand that. Will anyone participate or partake in a transaction if they are going to be charged for the money that is going to come inside? So if that is the case, they will not take part. That will not be so encouraging. Hence, this itself conceptually is wrong. Okay. So if 2 is wrong, look at this. You can remove this, and if 1 is right, you can remove this. Okay. So you are there here 1 only or 1 and 3. Now come to this. Operating hours for RTGS are restricted on certain days, while it is not true for NEFT. Now, if you know which is advanced and which is not, relatively not, that is why I told you, whenever they ask you 2 variables on technology, understand which is more advanced compared to the other. With that itself, you can deduce the answer. Now, if something is advanced, why are you restricting it in certain days or certain hours? It should not be restriction. The restriction should be lesser as you go to the advanced part of your technology. Yes or no? With that, you can say that this is also wrong, and hence the answer here is 1 only. Okay. Now, to actually tell you the conceptual level, RTGS is not restricted. It is available 24 hours, 365 days. Even NEFT is available 24 hours, 365 days. There is no restrictions at all. They have removed all types of restrictions. But overall, I just taught you how you can use your lines of thought to deduce the answer. So the next time when you see 2 technologies that are asked, or 2 variables of technology that is asked, always first come to the conclusion of which is advanced and which is not, and then apply the same logic here, you will get the answer. I hope this learning you will take and you have written it down. So this completes the 68th question. Alright guys, now this question I would consider as difficult because either you know or don't know. There is no scope for using your wisdom. Whenever there is no scope for using your wisdom or logic or lines of thought, the question becomes relatively difficult. Now let us read the question. Consider the following countries: UAE, France, Germany, Singapore, Bangladesh. How many countries among the above are there other than India where international merchant payments are accepted under UPI? Okay. Option is A, only 2, B, only 3, C, only 4, and D, all the 5. Okay, let me just give the answer directly. The correct answer is UAE is correct. You have Singapore is correct. France is correct. Okay, these two are wrong. So the answer here is only 3. Okay, other countries where it is allowed is in Nepal, in Bhutan, okay, in Sri Lanka, okay, and in Mauritius. If I am right, these are the countries that the UPI is available or is accepted. Okay, all right. So the answer here is B. Again, there is no learning here. You either should know or you don't know. It is okay. Just go on to the next question. Okay, so this is 69th question. Okay, guys. Again, we come across a government program, and whenever I've told you are coming across the government program, you should learn the purpose, you should learn the ministry, and you should learn the beneficiaries. Okay, these are the 3 things that you should always learn in a government program. If you can do that, you will definitely get the questions right. Let us see this. Now look at this. Consider the following statements about Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. Okay, the first statement is it targets installation of 1 crore solar rooftop panels in the residential sector. So this is the variable. It targets installation of 1 crore solar rooftop panels in the residential sector. The next is the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy aims to impart training on installation, operation, maintenance and repairs of solar rooftop systems at the grassroots level. Okay, it aims to create more than 3 lakh skilled manpower through fresh skilling and upskilling under the scheme component of capacity building. Okay, again this is a variable that you should know. So in all the 3 statements, we for sure can tell that this is true. Why? Because it is one generic, there is less specific variable there for the examiner to change. So more or less we know that this particular statement is true, but these are the 2 statements where you have to know the specificity of that particular program. But it is not difficult because this was in news, and if you have read, as I told you, the 3 dimensions, that is the purpose or objective, the ministry and the beneficiaries. Any program you read, if you can read these 3, you can automatically get the answer. So overall, I will tell you the answer. The answer here is all the 3 statements are correct. So here you have 1, 2 and 3. Okay, whenever they give you specific factual information, it always comes to the conclusion where you know or you don't know. Okay, and you cannot eliminate here. You should either know or not know. However, the answer for the 70th one is, answer is D, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, let us solve this question. Again, freedom struggle itself is a very important recurring theme. So you should have a good idea about the freedom struggle and the important events that has happened in our freedom struggle. Okay, let us read out the question first. Sedition has become my religion was the famous statement given by Gandhiji at the time of. Okay, there are 4 statements. The Champaran Satyagraha, publicly violating salt law at Dandi, attending the 2nd roundtable conference in London, the launch of the Quit India movement. Okay, now sedition has become my religion. What do you mean by sedition? Sedition means breaking the law. So if sedition means breaking the law, in Champaran Satyagraha, Gandhiji does not break any law. So this becomes wrong. The next is attending the 2nd roundtable conference in London. Again, Gandhiji does not break any law. Hence, this is also wrong. Sedition has become my religion. Now, there are 2 places here where there are chances of Gandhiji breaking the law. Publicly violating salt law at Dandi, the launch of the Quit India movement. Now, if you take these 2, obviously Quit India movement also saw breaking of the law. But look at the statements properly. Publicly violating salt law at Dandi. They are telling explicitly violating salt law at Dandi. Okay, let's come back to that. Publicly violating salt law at Dandi. Okay, next, the launch of Quit India movement. Okay, in the launch, the Gandhiji may have told, may not have told, but here they are explicitly telling publicly violating salt law at Dandi. And yes, Dandi march, Gandhiji proactively took part in that particular march. So there is very high probability that you can say that this is correct. Now I am again discussing this with the presumption that you have no idea about this statement, but you are able to use your lines of thought to come to the answer. So with that, I can say that B is, or B may be the correct answer. So overall B is the correct answer, but I just told you with the lines of thought how you can come to 2 options and somehow use your logic in order to get to that right answer. You just should not guess, but you should use some type of logic in order to get that answer and break that 50-50 probability. So I hope you got this. So the answer for the 71st one is B, publicly violating salt law at Dandi. And yes, in that Dandi, when Gandhiji broke that particular salt law, that is when he says sedition has become my religion. Okay, now let us look at this question. Again, Indus Valley civilization is a recurring theme and you should have a very, very good grip over it, and this is a very easy question. Okay, look at it. The famous female figurine known as Dancing Girl found at Mohenjo-daro is made of, okay, carnelian, clay, bronze, gold. The answer is bronze. Okay, so basically in IVC, I told you that IVC is a recurring theme. Okay, IVC is a recurring theme. So whenever there is a recurring theme, you have to build a depth. You have to build a depth how? When you have conventional sites. What are conventional sites? Conventional sites are, you have Harappa, you have Mohenjo-daro, then you have Lothal, then you have Dholavira, then you have Rakhi Gadi, then you have Sarkotada. Okay, so these are all conventional sites. So conventional sites, they will never ask surfacial questions. You have to go a little bit in depth. That is, what is the speciality? What are the unique findings in this particular sites? So like that you should find some depth in these conventional sites. Apart from that, you have to find the list of non-conventional sites. List of non-conventional sites. So you have many such non-conventional sites. For example, Kuntasi. For example, Desalpur. For example, Farmana. Okay, so these are all non-conventional sites. I'm just telling 3. There are more than 50. Okay, so these are all non-conventional sites. So make a list of non-conventional sites that they can ask just which of the following sites belong to IVC. They can ask like that also. Or they can ask you a little bit in depth about these conventional sites. That is how whenever you take a recurring theme and whenever you identify that it's a recurring theme, try to build some depth. Okay. However, the answer to this question, very straightforward. The answer is bronze dancing girl found in Mohenjo-daro. So the answer is C for 72nd question. And one more thing is, in budget 2026, in budget 2026-27, they have announced that there is going to be 15 archaeological sites. 15 archaeological sites which will be changed or which will be, upgraded to cultural destinations. Now, among that 15 archaeological sites, 3 belong to IVC. So, what are the 3? Those 3 are, one you have Rakhi Gadi, another is you have Lothal, another is you have Dholavira. So, these Rakhi Gadi, Lothal and Dholavira are to be converted as cultural destination sites according to the recent budget of 2026-27. So, like that, you should always try to map the current events back to your static. Okay, so this completes the 72nd question. Okay guys, this question is a little too specific, you either know or not know. Okay, but I will tell you how to build the depth. Look at this. Who provided legal defense to the people arrested in the aftermath of Chauri Chaura incident? You have A. C.R. Das, 2. Madan Mohan Malaviya and Krishna Kant. You have Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu and Khwaja Hasan Nizami, and you have Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Okay. Now, the answer either you should know or not know. The answer is Madan Mohan Malaviya and Krishna Kant. Okay. Now, the answer is B. I am not talking about the answer because either you should know or not know. It does not have anything to do with lines of thought or logic or any common sense. You should know this. Now, the next question that should come to your mind is, when you are reading conventional books, you are not going to come across such depth. Conventional books will not give you such depth. Then how to develop such depth is, you are going to develop such depth not from conventional books, you are going to develop such depth through mock tests. That is why, along with revisions of your conventional book, why mock test is important is, it is the mock test that will help you to develop depth, especially in recurring theme. I told you freedom struggle is a recurring theme. In that freedom struggle, if you want to build depth, you should solve a lot of tests. In that test, the institutions will do the job for you to search what is there outside the scope of the book and then give you that as a question, and then you can read the synopsis and develop the depth. That is why take more mock tests, and that will actually help you to develop depth, especially in recurring themes. A very interesting fact is, Madan Mohan Malaviya will represent this case in the High Court, and the sessions judge would have sentenced 170 people to death, and Madan Mohan Malaviya will be appearing in the High Court for the appeal of that 170 people. Okay, that is the interesting factor. But anyways, the answer for the 73rd one is B, Madan Mohan Malaviya and Krishna Kant. Alright guys, let us go ahead and solve this question. Again, this question is very straightforward and easy, provided that you know the sequence of events that has happened in our freedom struggle. Let us read the question first. Subsequent to which one of the following events, Gandhiji, who consistently opposed untouchability and appealed for its eradication from all spheres, decided to include the upliftment of origins in his political and social program? So they have given 4 different events: Pune Pact, Gandhian-Irwin Agreement or Delhi Pact, arrest of the Congress leadership at the time of the Quit India movement, promulgation of the Government of India Act 1935. So I told you, understanding the sequence of events is very, very important. Okay, so understand that there was something called communal award. This communal award was given by Ramsay MacDonald, who was the British Prime Minister at that point of time. So Ramsay MacDonald will give something called communal award in the year 1932. What this communal award does is, it will extend separate electorate. It will extend separate electorate to many classes, but one such class is depressed classes. And depressed classes are nothing but Dalits. Dalits are the ones who are subjected to untouchability. Now, Gandhiji will now vehemently oppose this. Why Gandhiji will vehemently oppose this communal award is, Gandhiji says that if we accept the communal award, then we are legitimizing untouchability as a practice. So we should not legitimize it, because that is an inhuman practice, and if we have to eradicate it, then we cannot legitimize untouchability or provide separate electorate to Dalits. And as a compromise, what Gandhiji does is, Gandhiji and Ambedkar will come up with what you call as Pune Pact. And what is Pune Pact? Pune Pact is, instead of separate electorate, where a particular constituency is reserved for the Dalits and only Dalits can vote, instead of, that is what is separate electorate, they will tell that the reservation of the constituency will be for Dalits only, but everyone can vote. That is what is reservation. So in this Pune Pact, they will not allow separate electorate, but they will provide reservations for the Dalits. So here they will say that there is no separate electorate. So in that way, Gandhiji was able to convince Ambedkar that it is not good to legitimize that practice, and only if we not legitimize it, we can eradicate it, and hence they will reach a compromise in Pune Pact. So from then onwards, Gandhiji will take it seriously upon himself in order to make sure to eradicate the untouchability practice, and hence Gandhiji will include the upliftment of origins in his political and social program. So if you understand this sequence of events, you know that the story is very simple, and the answer is A. So in modern India or in ancient and medieval India, sequence of events are very, very important. If you know the sequence of events, 90% of the time you will get the right answer. So the answer for the 74th question is A, the Pune Pact. Alright guys, let us do the 75th question. Let me read out the question first. Consider the following fruits: papaya, pineapple, guava. How many of the above were introduced in India by the Portuguese in the 16th and 17th century? A, only 1, B, only 2, C, all the 3, and D, none. Okay, understand, advent of Europeans is an important recurring theme. So you have to know a little bit in depth about the advent of Europeans. Okay, that is from the decline of Mughals, to the British conquest of India. From the decline of Mughals to British conquest of India, that is where this comes into picture, the advent of Europeans. So this is where the Portuguese, the Dutch, the English and the French come into picture. Okay, so when they come, who are the important commanders, what was the important places or factories, and what did they do in India? This becomes very, very important. So from that angle, this question is being asked. However, there is no logic or lines of thought here. You either know or not know. So consider the following fruits. If you take papaya, pineapple and guava, how many of the above were introduced in India by the Portuguese in the 16th and 17th centuries? The answer here is all the 3. If you take Portuguese, they have introduced many different crops. For example, you can take sweet potato, chilies. They have introduced groundnuts, cashews, custard apple, tobacco, rubber. Look at this. Along with these 3, they have also introduced all these things. So one of the significance of Portuguese during this period was introduction of all these different crops or fruits. Okay, that is why you should know a little bit in depth about advent of Europeans. However, the answer for the 75th one is all the three are correct. So I hope that you understood how to go about studying the modern India, especially the recurring themes. Okay guys, that completes the episode 3 of Decode Prelims PYQ 2025. I hope you observed and I hope you were able to deduce. If you can do that, I can guarantee that you will dominate the upcoming UPSC Prelims 2026. We take a lot of efforts to do such videos for you. The only request from our side is please share this video with as many people as possible, because those views matter and only then we can be incentivized to do this on a regular basis. So a kind and humble request to all students watching this video is please share this video with your student community so that it gets more views. Thank you so much for all the love and support. I'll come back with the episode 4 with much more energy and I hope that you people will be waiting for it. I'll see you again guys. Thank you so much. Bye.